Hey, what's up, guys? This is Mark from the Basketball Doctors, and we have a special guest today, Coach Q, Adam Quinter. So, Coach Q, tell us who Coach Q is, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really excited to get into a conversation with, a fellow rehab enthusiast. So, I'm Coach Q. I come from Tempe, Arizona. It's home of ASU Sun Devils, and for trainers out there, like Exos was built there. So when I was a kid, I actually got to train down there. That was pretty cool. But my background is all over the board when it comes to training and performance training, rehab. I've dabbled in every single world, but I guess I kind of go through my story. I started in basketball. My father was a scout in the NBA for 30 plus years. And I kind of was born into loving basketball. I had the ball in my hand when I was 4 years old. And basically I went through every level, and I got hurt, and I fell back on my schooling, which was in kinesiology. I worked for my aunt at a PT office. I thought that was my path for sure. I thought it was really boring when I got there. So, I was pushing paperwork and all these, exercises you would give to general population. And I thought it was super boring. I was like, man, how did I just work with basketball players, So I kind of did the other end of the stick. Like, that was my part-time job. And then I was doing like on-court training, like basketball, just because that's where my bread and butter was. Like, I could do that with my eyes closed because I was in it so long. I was able to see like Steve Nash and, Mari Stoudemire, all these guys do their rehab processes and their on-court stuff. And that really fascinated me more. So I kind of directed towards that. When I had my on-court guys, it was like, man, every player had a problem. So like, I was teaching them rehab stuff they could do before games, or, for warm-ups and things like that. And then they'd call me and say, hey man, my shoulder's fixed, or, like my knee doesn't hurt anymore. Or, so I was like, man, that could really be a path for me. Like, so what I did was I moved to LA from Arizona. I was living in Scottsdale at the time. And when I got here, I literally was, I was living out of my car type of thing. Like, we just came, me and my wife at the time, and like, we had nothing. And I'm working at Equinox, was my first job here. I was like, this is the mecca for training. I have to go to LA. And this is where all the basketball guys are. They live in the off season, all that stuff. So I started at Equinox, and literally when I started at Equinox, it was the craziest thing. It was like, oh, there's Magic, there's Byron Scott, there's a Meta World Peace.
What Equinox was this, man? Was this like?
Yeah, this was in West
Pasadena?
LA.
Oh, West LA.
No, West LA. Yeah, I mean, that's where all the stars were.
Yeah.
And it was like, I just fell in the belly of the beast, literally. And I thought I knew everything. And then, I went through Equinox education, and I was just like blown away. I'm like, I can't even believe that a big box company would give me all this information about, even more than I knew about PT, or, like VO2 max. Like, we run all these assessments and things on regular people. And then, I had experience in basketball. So I'm like getting all these pro guys like, hey, I'm going to do your VO2 max today. Like, and then I was like a rookie at it at the time. Right. And I'm like, man, I'm seeing crazy results with this. And then, I would do like some stuff I would learn in their education for PT or something. I'm like, let me try this. How about, 4-7-8 breathing, like stuff like that. And I'm like, man, that has a crazy result. So basically what happened was I was getting so many guys at that time at such a huge pay rate. I mean, the rate there is crazy to even go there, but the training rate's even more nuts. And so I was like, man, I'm making a ludicrous amount of money. If I just put down the fee a little bit, I'm going to double, triple, quadruple my business. So that's what I did. I went all the way up in Equinox to a tier X coach is what it's called. It's basically the cream of the crop. There's only like, I don't know, 40, 50 of us out of the whole company, thousands and thousands of trainers. So yeah, I went all the way up and I'm like, what's the roof here? Like where can I get better? So I went in business on my own. And I actually left there to go to a PT office, and I became there's a office in Encino, California. It's called Sports Rehab LA. And I started doing training there, performance training. And basically they're a rehab facility. So I'm getting literally there was every big name athlete was going to Sports Rehab LA at that time. That was about 5 years ago. And that company really blew up, and we were getting all these pro athletes in there with injuries. So literally I was just doing injury stuff every single day. And then it turned into, okay, now we have a bunch of strength people coming because of the referrals and how good it was going. And we did that I did it for 4 years. That company is still there. I love those guys over there, what they do. They get guys back on the playing field ASAP. But I had to get out on my own, and I went and got my own facility, and that's where I'm now. And I was doing high school basketball for a while with Sierra Canyon. I did that for 3 years when they first built this big super teams, and then we won. My first year we didn't win. The next 2 in a row we won. And then I was like, I love my guys that went through my system. I built all these systems around periodization and like building out cardio programs and you name it, I did it. Jumping programs. I don't know if you've seen Sierra Canyon play back then, but every kid's head was on the rim.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
what happened last night though, man? They lost.
Yeah,
to
they lost
Verona.
last night. And, I mean, that's a 1 in a million chance, I guess.
Yeah.
I haven't been at Sierra in 2 or 3 years. I actually went into coaching again. I was like, you know what? I think I want to go back into coaching. I just wanted to give it a go one time. And so I did an assistant coach job at Crossroads, is where
Santa Monica.
Sharif and them went, and Shaq's kids, and they won a championship right before I got there, I believe. And then I was the assistant coach and the strength and conditioning coach for a year. And then I took a year off of high school altogether. That's when the pandemic hit. I was literally only doing NBA like off season during that time because like nobody was going outside. So it was like, we were all like underground trainers at that point, going to houses or like just trying to get in where we could,
Yeah.
And at that point I was very selective on who we were training. And then they lifted the thing, pretty heavily. So then I went back to high school, and now I train at Heritage Christian, which is another private school here. They have some pretty good players. They're pretty good now. And so I'm excited to actually deal with they have a lot of young guys. So that's my love, is just, like helping young guys develop. Obviously at that age, you see like, the strength gains and performance gains are crazy. Like I've done all the data, like I'm super big into data.
Yeah.
I work with Brett Dolezal at UCLA, like exercise physiology. We do like testing on everybody. Like I'm super nerd when it comes to that stuff. Just to see like, okay, where is my stuff working? And then like, where do we go from here? Is there more that we can add, or is there more that we can subtract? I feel like sometimes performance coaches, we think too much sometimes though. So it gets a little heavy with the data, and it's like, all right, do we want to study on this, or are we just gonna like go with the flow. And like, sometimes you do need to keep it simple. I don't know. My thought process has been all over the place lately,
Yeah.
because of like, how much can you teach a kid that's in high school, that's brains everywhere, they're on
Yeah.
technology all day. So I keep it pretty short and sweet now. Like, I have a system that works. I've averaged like 5 inches on everybody's vertical in the last 5 years. Like, if
Makes
you're with
sense.
me like more than 3 months, you're gonna see crazy gains. And it's the same system. I do it for everybody, unless I get, like a rehab client. You said that, like, you want to hear some stuff about the like high school off season, like even pro
Yeah.
off season. They look lot different, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
developing kids is way different than, an off season with somebody that comes in with an injury from the NBA, and you're like, okay, we got to tailor it back all the way. Like, no court time, no,
Yeah.
so it just depends on the person. I feel like in performance training, if I learned anything up to this point, it's like every single thing depends on the person and how you assess them and what your goal is.
I think that's
Those
huge.
systems,
Assessment.
yeah. I mean, like, those systems are in place for a reason, like they work, but also it's like, okay, you can't do that today. So now what? Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
depends on what person you get, and pain tolerance, and like, you got all these external factors that come into play. So yeah.
No, for sure, man. And then let's just go based on the assessment. Like, as we know, high school season's ending, college is ending soon. If they don't make it to the March Madness, hopefully it doesn't end for some of them. But obviously high school is a little different, because I feel like now we work with a lot of rehabbing high school kids, and there really isn't no off season. They got AU. It's not like college and NBA. It's a true off season. Their off season is probably almost worse than the regular season. But what are some of the
Absolutely.
things, like you mentioned assessment? I think assessment's key. I mean, we always have to go, we can't guess, we have to assess. What are some of the assessments you would do? Let's say you got some high school kids, because I mean, obviously, like you said, your program, but you always have to assess. Like you were saying, you're
Yeah.
collecting data, you're assessing. What are some of the things you're assessing for a high school kid, or college kid? Obviously, a college kid's a little different, because he's probably in a more standardized program. They have strength coaches. Let's say a high school kid that doesn't have, because I mean, most high schools don't even have a strength coach. So you're
That's
kind of the few, the cream at Heritage and then Sierra. But let's say for your typical LA high school, or that doesn't have a strength coach,
mhm.
what are some of the assessments that you would check for a player that's come in? It's like, all right, Coach Q, I'm ready to start working with you, now until get me right for summer AU tournaments and exposures.
Yeah.
What are you looking
So
at?
like, I ran into this problem, like, probably the last couple of years. Was like, these guys came in for off season for high school, and I cannot believe the amount of kids that are training now, for one, and for two, how quickly after their season they're asking to do training, or their parents are asking for training. It's ludicrous. And what I tell a lot of them, I'm going to be completely straightforward. Hopefully everybody's listening out there, to this, especially in high school, or a parent. Like,
Yeah.
you need that time off to heal. Like, that time off right after the season, 2-3 weeks, a month, go on vacation, do something other than basketball, other than, kill your body. Because over time, I mean, I was a culprit of that. Like, I was doing the same thing when I was a kid. It was just like basketball, basketball, basketball. And then by the time I hit like 25, I had so many miles on me that, like, I was getting injuries that a 40, 50-year-old were getting. Um, I had one instance, like, I went up for a dunk in college, and somebody undercut me. And when I went to see the doctor about my back when I landed, he was looking at my back x-ray is like black, black, black. All my vertebrae was like, okay, your back is eroded. Like, you're like a 40-year-old man at 25. So like,
Dang.
what I would say to kids is like, take back the reins, make sure that you get that time off, 2-3 weeks, month. I love a month. I wouldn't even argue with them. And if you're coming to see me train and it's not 3 weeks to a month, or more, like we're doing ground exercises, you're going to be bored for like at least 2 weeks, because I'm not going to load you. I'm not going to do anything that's, crazy speedy, like they want, let's hit the track. No,
Yeah.
like we're not doing anything for endurance. I'm like the guy that's like, nah, don't play for like 2-3 weeks.
That's not gonna get them better, man. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
They always say.
right. Well, they always
You're not
think that,
gonna-
right? It's like, I
yeah,
think that, like in my mind, I'm 37 now. And my dad's, he's got 22 years on me. He had me when he's 22. And my mom also, like they were pounding, because like back then that's the only fun they had. Like, so now it looks like these guys are playing video games, or they're going to the movies, or going, like there's always something to do, especially in LA, that it's like they're constantly going, they get no sleep. They're either playing basketball or doing something. So now I'm like, can we get the kids in for, off season, and I'll take them for 2 weeks and let's practice breathing. Let's do like animal flow. I don't know if like certain modalities
ground mobilities
like,
and stuff.
yeah, where you're like just doing stability, balance, working on proprioception, things like that. And those things are really key, because, when you don't have your body to fall back on, then what? You have nothing. You're going to sit on the bench. So if you go
What's
straight
the famous
into
saying is like the best ability is
availability. That's like one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the one you said, like, you can't guess, you got to assess, right? So usually in the off season, I'm taking the kids in, I'm asking them a ton of questions, because I want to know everything about the kid. I'm not going to just pound you in the ground. So I'm going to ask them that first. I'll go through a little questionnaire, like just to see where they're at. The other thing is like now that I have the pick of the litter, I'm like, I'm asking that kids, like doing motivational interviewing, like, why do you want this? Like, what's your motivation? Like, that's another thing that I don't think people are doing with the kids right now, is like, they don't even really talk to their coaches. They're just like, listen to what they say or don't listen to what they say, but they don't have like conversations. And it's like, you got to have that conversation with certain kids. Like, you didn't show up 2 days last week, you're not going to get the result. You know what I mean? Or you're doing too much, you need to sit your ass down. It's part of my language, but like those type
Well,
of,
man, there's kids under 18 watching this. No, I'm kidding.
yeah. And then on the other hand, it's like, okay, I like to see, obviously everybody in the world likes to see somebody's vertical, right? That's like the standard bar for like, especially max vert. It's like, can you bring speed, or do you shut down when the transition happens? Like, I like to see all those like nuances inside of that. I also like a 40-meter dash, like in the combine, do like 3/4 court, like type of thing. I like to see all those kind of drills, because now the kids are going so early in the draft that like, I like to kind of prepare them for that kind of stuff already. So that's part of like my off season, is like training them on certain drills. They have to be specific at certain stuff. That's just kind of the way that the NBA goes, and it trickles down, and you just have to be either good at some of those things, or you have to have a magnificent mind. So I like to do a lot of like assessing that part. Like we do like breathing exercises. That's going to cue me on like so many things on stress. And like, if a kid has his eyes closed and they're working on breathing and he's fidgety, he's all over the place, like, that there's some type of trauma there. Like, and those type of kids, I'm going to take to the side and just say, like, we got to get you to calm down and get into that like parasympathetic world, like, as is like, half the battle when it comes to rehab too. So to get them to do those two things, I do, flexibility assessments. Like, I'm old school with the FMS. I love that for mobility, but like I'm not gonna assess that for like, say, a loaded movement, because it has no carryover.
Yeah.
Like, if I did a FMS and you're doing overhead squat, then it may look nothing like that if I throw, a bar over your head. So you got to kind of look at those two with a grain of salt and kind of do both, right? I do only 5 rep maxes for the high school kids. I never go below that. I think it's a waste of time, because if you really do some research and like, I come from like the Pavels and the guys that were like masters in Russia at
Yeah.
periodization, and like they never did that. So it's like,
Yeah.
why am I going to do it with a 15-year-old?
It's also
you
kind
know,
of risky, man. I think the
yeah,
risk
super
is
risky,
it's too
high
much risk,
risk,
no reward.
no reward. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
We
like the
speak the
five
same
rep.
language. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of like what off season looks like. Like, I'll get them in. First, we'll see how much they did up to that point, and like, okay, are we shutting them down and doing all this groundwork first? But I won't test probably till 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out. This year, I kind of smartened up and I built a camp. So this way they're all coming in at once. And I'm like, all right, we're all at the
Nice.
same spot. You know what I mean?
Nice. That's good.
Because before they were coming in here, there, everywhere. Oh my goodness, I couldn't tell you how hard that assessment process goes when they're everywhere on the dates. So yeah, that's kind of what the off season looks like. And then I'll periodize out, like always go backwards, right? Like 3 months in advance, like what's my goal here? And then I'll shoot backwards, like, okay, this kid needs to be completely sprinting. He had like, something wrong with his ankle, right? So I'm going through like the gait process and all that stuff leading up to that 3rd month, right? Periodizing it out. And then if I'm like trying to have another kid that's just wanting to get stronger, like most of these kids, they just need to get stronger. I remember back when we played, like, I don't know if you played, but back when I played, we didn't have any strength stuff. Like,
Oh
we just
no,
went out there
weight
and
room didn't
played.
exist, man.
I mean,
Yeah.
didn't even stretch.
Yeah.
I heard a great podcast one time. Like some producers, like movie producers, were saying, we would love to get better at our processes and better at this type of filming. And they got to Adam Sandler. He's like, I think I would have just stretched a lot more. Like, looking back on it, like, and
Yeah.
it's so true, because in my era, like, nobody stretched. We just played basketball until you got to college, and you got killed on the weights. You were like not even ready to hit weights, but you hit weights just because somebody's yelling in your face. So now it's come to a point where like we have really good performance coaches. So like now it's time to utilize us and the science behind it and the studies. I pride myself on have so many. I probably have more certifications than 10 trainers, more, like degrees and just all this, the book knowledge. Now we have these podcasts. I mean, there's so many places that people can get all this information, and it's like, now use us, and we're like really taking it by the book when it comes to even as kids in the development stages. And I feel like that's where it needs to be. And hopefully we'll see less injuries and more time off and resting and recovery. I think that's probably the least hit thing. So I really pride myself on trying to periodize out where we get in those rest periods. So that, especially in AAU season, like you said, AAU season now is like, I heard some kid had 7 games in one weekend, I heard.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's probably not it. So I'm even telling some parents, like, I know AAU coaches are gonna hate this, but it's like, you need to sit some of these tournaments out. Like, you're not gonna you're gonna get noticed if you're good or
Yeah, there's no
regardless.
college scouts. Yeah, there's no
You know what I
scouts
mean?
there. They're gonna
Like,
change it.
if it's a small tournament and you're just gonna play to play, like, that's probably the wrong answer. But California is cool. They have 1 month where they play with their team. I don't know if you've seen that. So it's kind of
Oh,
like less games, practices. I like that better. than
Yeah.
just pounding them away. But you know, you're getting like EYBL, you have
Yeah.
all these different circuits now, and it's getting a little crazy. So that's where my process goes. That's where like my mind's at. I feel like, you know, most of these kids need to go to like ancient Eastern times and like, let's work on your diet in the off season. Like stop eating Chick-fil-A. They bring Chick-fil-A into my place. I'm like throwing it away. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like
you're hating on Chick-fil-A, man. It's good.
it is tasty, but
Yeah.
these guys, you know, if you're eating it
Yeah.
every day, it's not so good on your cell health. And your
Exactly.
cell health
Exactly.
is everything. So,
Yeah. It's better
um,
than Mickey
yeah,
D's, man. No.
like I just think we need to get back to those times, like yoga. I thought martial arts was great. I did that as a kid, and then it kind of like snuck its way out of practices in the U.S. But I think those type of things are great. Yoga, breathing essentials. I even dabble in like Reiki and you know,
Mm,
they need more body work. Like some of this stuff that's access for them is you know, parallel to what their end game is. Like some of these kids
yeah.
are coming in. I have a kid at Heritage right now, and he's 14. He looks like he's a grown man. And it's
Yeah.
like,
It's
you're so dense with muscle, like you need body work, you need a chiropractor, you need,
yeah.
like, I'm telling him like rest, you need this. And he's looking at me like deer in the headlights because 14-year-old doesn't know anything.
Yeah.
And I guarantee he went home when I told him that, he didn't tell his parents that. It's like, I got to literally reach out to them like, yo, he's going to be hurt by next year if you don't take care of this stuff now. So like, if you're looking to, like, if I'm speaking to high school players right now, if you're looking to be in the NBA or you're looking to play professionally overseas or anything like that, if you want to make money at this game, you better take care of your body, because without your
Exactly.
body, you're nothing. That's
Exactly.
probably the biggest key that I could give to a high school player right now.
Perfect. Perfect. I mean, you kind of summed it up. I mean, I think the biggest thing, a lot of people, like you mentioned, are just going straight into training right after, but I mean, I think there's more injuries now than there were before just because of the increased load. Um, and so like, let's say they finish one season, they're going straight into AAU, and that's just gonna keep on loading the patellar tendon. That's why everyone has jumper's knee nowadays.
Mhm.
And then, like you said, it's we have to get these kids into that parasympathetic recovering, work on, I mean, the resources are there, like you mentioned, in the internet, Instagram. There's so much resources that we've never had when I was playing. I mean, Instagram didn't even exist. I mean, it was existing, but
Right.
now there's so many videos, so much information that they got to take advantage of it. But now, like you kind of mentioned, like, hey, one of the tips to those high school kids is take 2 to 3 weeks off. Now we start training. But how do you, Coach Q, how do you regulate training with that crazy AU training, private basketball skills training? It seems like there's so many other things going on at the same time. Like,
Mm.
how do you there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen at one point, you know?
Yeah.
How do you kind of control everything?
For me, it's like that conversation with the parent. Um, uh, Sometimes I do have these type of kids, and it's like I have one in particular right now that, like, his, I'm not gonna name anybody, but his dad's like one of those guys that's like every hour he's got to be doing something. Like, like he is not pulling back the reins at all. Like no fun. Like if there's fun, like no, you're not allowed to have fun. Like you're doing basketball, you're training, you're going back to basketball at night, you're shooting in your sleep. You know what I mean? Like so and this kid has the same thing that you're talking about. It's like, all right, you got, you know, patellar tendonitis, you probably have wear and tear under your kneecap. Like he like, if I just touch his knee, he's like screaming, you know what I mean? So there's, you know, built up scar tissue over 10 years. That's crazy when you're like 16, 17 years old. Like you should never have that type of thing, especially if you're doing like kind of what's in my system is like I built in yoga, I built in days for them to have off time to go to the therapist. So I actually built a calendar system. A few people actually try to steal this from me, but it's literally like I'm building out your calendar for the month. Like you go outside of this calendar and you come to me with complaints, like I don't want to hear it. You know what I mean? And I'm giving this calendar to their parents. You know, most of them look at it. I would tell you that like most parents love their children, right? So they're gonna look at this calendar and be like, okay, I got to eat in the morning, because this expenditure during the day from somebody like that, I mean, you're hurt, but like you might not be hurt if you just ate a little bit. So like high schoolers, they never eat because they're doing more phone tapping, right? Like all day long. So it's like, oh yeah, when was my last meal? Like 10 a.m. It's like 4 p.m. You know what I mean?
I've done
So
so
like
many
I
times.
have a couple kids that like that are like super skinny and like to the bone. And I'm like, how many times a day are you eating? And they're like, probably two. I'm like, probably two. Like, so when we have this calendar, it takes care of all that. It's like, okay, eat here. You're coming to train with me. You're going to eat again after. You're taking your green supplements, like, you know what I mean? Like through this calendar through a day, so they can see what the pros do. That's what the pros do, right? They're like, okay, this is where I have time to eat. This is where I have time. Stretches here, masseuse is here. My plane leaves at this time. So as you can see, these high schoolers, their schedules should almost look like that because they're doing all the AAU stuff,
Yeah.
right? Especially the kids that I have, all of them are in AAU. So literally I'm telling them like, see this schedule? This is everything that's pertaining to your training. Then you're putting your basketball trainer in here. And then on top of that, you're themselves, I make them do it themselves. Say you're putting your AAU here, you're putting where you're leaving and when you're coming back, so that both of us can see it's actually online, so I can see everything. And this process is great, because if they have any complaints, I'm like, okay, let's just pull out your calendar, like,
Yeah.
see what you're doing, boom, boom, boom. Oh, did you do extra shooting last night? And they're like, oh yeah, I did like 500 shots last night.
Is that
I
why
was
your
like,
knee's
can we
hurting?
take that out? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, we got to build habits. These kids have bad habits. And it's like, if you're doing too much, you know, the car is going to break down. That's just kind of how it goes. And it's
100%
like,
agree, man.
yeah, we don't really run an electric car, right? We're running on gas here. Like, this is the food expenditure. So I'm looking at all those like little details, especially kids that need to gain weight, which is a lot of them now. Not everybody is born like with dense muscle like that, you know. Like I have dealt with practically every NBA kid at this point, like where their dads played in the NBA. And like those kids usually have a lot of muscle. So if they come in skinny, I'm like, you're probably not eating.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah.
So that's kind of just gives you like a little background on like how my thought process goes when it comes to like habit building and habit training. I think that's a big deal too, not just the rest and recovery, but I also think that we're missing the bar because we have these now. So we got wearables. Like these kids, instead of being like this all day, how about you check your app? Like, did you sleep good last night?
Yeah.
Right? Like we gotta have hygiene, like, you know, sleep hygiene, good hygiene when it comes to nutrition. Like I'm a master nutritionist. Like, okay, give me what you're eating. Okay, I got all the stuff is covered if you're just giving me information, so that I can make that assessment. Like, okay, this is where you need to throw your darts, if you will, right? And then all of a sudden you have a super athlete. And that's like where my thought process is now going, is like, okay, how do I make like a mediocre player like a super athlete, like LeBron James, or, you know, somebody that's mentally all there and physically all there. And those are built by habits. I don't know if you saw
Exactly.
that LeBron James came out with the article, is like he spends $1 million
$1
on his
million.
training.
Yeah.
Now he's endorsing major brands for fitness, meditation, Like
Yeah,
all
calm,
these,
right? Like calming.
yep. Now he has his nutrition line. Like you can literally look at his like marketing and
And
see
just
where
buy
like
everything.
this is where training is going, right? So it's like do all this and maybe get a really good performance trainer while you're at it. That's gonna tell you no when you need to be heard no. Like I feel like that's another thing. Like I was telling another parent the other day, is like we need to stop letting these kids like control the narrative. Like they're like coming in and like we'll do like certain workouts, certain sets and stuff. They do like half the workout and I'm cursing them and do it. But at the same time, it's like, bro, what's going on today? Like you're not doing the work. Like you want this part, but like where's the work at? And they're like, yeah, I just thought, like I wasn't feeling that good. I'm like, so go home, like go get rest. Like we have to get their thought process around like pain and their thought process around like, okay, I'm mentally not there today. Like I need to rest maybe.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
not be on my phone and go to sleep. You know what I mean? So all that stuff comes into play, and there's so much like the high schoolers. Every year, I have a battle with myself before the high school season starts. Like, am I gonna do this again? Am I gonna do this again? But I love working with kids so much that like my passion is still there. So I'm gonna continue doing it until I fall out of love with it, which is probably never. But I think those conversations need to be had, especially on podcasts like yours or on YouTube and all these things. Like we need to have those conversations that we're having now to explain to high school athletes, like you don't need to work day and night because your curve is going to look like this. Like you want it to steadily just keep going up, right? Like I never want to see you plateau. Like I want to see you just keep doing this without rest and recovery and sleep. You're never going to look like this. So
No, I totally agree with you, man. I think I like your calendar thing because what I've noticed there's two, I mean, also just I use a calendar for myself. It's like less energy for myself. The more I need to think, the more stress I have. So if I have everything planned out exactly, and that's what I tell the kids, it's like you got to plan out, but it's so hard to, like you said, incorporate other people because there's like you said, the parents are like, hey, he needs to do skills training, he needs to do that, he needs to do that. Oh, he's got shooting, and it's like, oh, his knee's still hurting. It was like obviously his knee's still hurting, and he's been running for like the past like 2 weeks
yeah,
nonstop. But I think I really like the calendar thing because I like how you do that with your athletes because if they go with you, you're like, okay, this is where you're gonna fit everything in, and it's less energy. It's like you want to kind of create a robot in a way that's like, okay, I just do this because that's when you get to college basketball, everything. It's like structured.
absolutely.
So the more you kind of get into it, I think that's huge. And I think the other thing that you mentioned is like the listening to their body, kind of like you kind of made it inference on it. It's like if they're not performing well, it's like you can't squeeze that out. And no one has like that mama mentality. Kobe was a little bit different. He was crazy, like I think that's what people kind of get. It's like, oh, I gotta be working in the gym. Kobe was working till like 4 a.m. But you know, he had
Yeah,
his fair share of injuries, man. So he had some injuries, but like you don't want to overwork
just playing
yourself.
through it. Like
Yeah, he was
I
playing
feel
through it.
like even back when I played, I I rarely saw a guy get injured and be like, "Nah, I can't play." If you think
Yeah.
back on it, like I played with broken toe for a whole season. Like I've done some crazy stuff. Like I played like basically like 3 to 6 months with a torn ACL.
Man.
And like just these certain things back then, like Kobe, like if if he didn't tear his Achilles, like I was afraid for him because like he just kept getting hurt like all the time. Like he was so crazy that he broke his finger, right, and he used his left hand.
Yeah, that's good. I think
Like
he tore his
nobody, I
rotator
don't think
cuff
everybody's
too,
ever
or
done that.
something. Yeah, it's
I
crazy.
mean, him and Allen Iverson are probably two of the most like, they'll play with 10 injuries at one time.
Yeah,
But like longevity wise, that's not a prime example. You know what I mean? It's like
it's not sustainable.
there's one out of 100 players that could do
Yeah.
that probably. I
Yeah.
would say now, especially now, because they're all complaining about pain, right? But they come to the gym to work out and don't want to work out. But if I hand them a ball, they'll go play for sure.
Yep.
I don't know if you've seen this, but I've seen this 100
Yeah.
times over. And I'm like, why didn't you make the workout today? Oh, we had to go to open run. I was like, how many days do you play this week? Oh, like every day except Sunday. Some people are even like, yeah, we played every day this week. I'm
Yeah.
like, all right, how do we transfer? Like, it's all balance, right? Everything in training is balance. So like, I feel like that part, if we just did that, say, hey, kid, balance is your whole program from now on. You're coming to strength training 4 times a week. You get a rest day in the middle, rest day at the end. You only can play 3-4 times a week. They're gonna look at us like we're crazy.
Yeah. How are you
You're
gonna
gonna
do that?
you're gonna go to therapy on your rest days.
Yeah.
You're gonna eat more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like to do all those different, I think it's too many things for them to think about, maybe as a high school basketball player. For a pro athlete, I'm like, okay, you need to eat more. And I go through like assessments, right? We'll go through like, a nutrition assessment. Like I'll take them to the actual doctor, get them blood work, see where their levels are off, hormones, all that, right? And then I prescribe them something. A professional athlete's like, this. Okay. I'm just gonna hire a chef. High school player would be like, yeah, maybe I'll go to like Chick-fil-A tomorrow in the morning and like eat breakfast like you told me. Like, no, like you gotta get quality nutrition in, right? So you can see the mindset between the two. It's like we just need a little bit more balance. That's it. And once we have balance, then you have a super athlete, right?
I like that phrase that you're saying, super athlete, and it's kind of comes first with like the mental kind of changing that perspective. And then like you're saying, less is more kind of at this stage. The more they're doing, the more strained they are. This is solid. I mean, I think this is good advice for any high school player going into right now, a critical part, like that off season for them to get better, because they're not going to get better if they continue hitting the court nonstop and they don't get in the weight room. They're not doing their mobility. They're not resting. I think the most important thing, you talk about sleep. I usually tell people, it's like, what's the best recovery? I was like, dude, the best thing is free. Just sleep at night, 8 hours. Best things in life for free, but that's big, especially during the school year. They have all these tests and stuff, like they're not sleeping 8 hours. But I think this is solid, man. I think it's a solid kind of framework for these athletes to start thinking. I think this is more like, hey, get your mind, right, in a way that you're thinking as a professional athlete. Look in your recovery, look in your nutrition. So I think it's a good mindset that you kind of explained to, and I think a lot of kids are going to learn from this. What's your last tip of advice for these high school kids going into it? You preached, that recovery, the rest, the mindset, the calendar, the habits. What would you say now for like the fun stuff that they like, the training? Like all they care about now is training and stuff.
I'd say like probably my best tip for them is try to stay off your phone, because it creates doubt. It creates blue light. All these things that we want to kind of go away from to get better cell health. Cell health is everything. And like, I feel like, we're just killing our body's cells. I did a lot of the research behind this. And I think once we have a balanced lifestyle, like anybody, I mean, even general population, you have a balanced lifestyle, you're healthier. And on the fun side, for a high school athlete that wants to jump higher, like there's so many techniques, right? But there's a technique for everybody. There's not one technique for everybody. So I would say like find a great performance coach. They're everywhere now. It used to be like, when I grew up, we had our football coach training us on weights, so like now we have so much technology and stuff that You can get a good performance coach to assess you. Okay, you have strong, weak tendons. Okay, that's what we're going to work on, right? It's like always look at your weakness and make it your strength. That would be my number one tip for any high school athlete right now. Or like I see a lot of kids, they just like doing the same move over and over. Okay, you have one good move. Like when you go to college, then what? When you go to pro, then what? You have any counters? You haven't, are you reading the game? Like there's so many things that kids can work on. I would say take your weaknesses and find a good coach that's going to tell you you're weak at this. Like, because some of these coaches will just be like, yeah, you look great. Let's just train, but like find that coach that's like, yo, you're super weak on your left hand. You can't, squat to save your life. Your unilateral strength, there's asymmetries there, which means like you're unbalanced one side to the other, strength wise. That's going to keep you away from so many injuries, right? Like I've been trying to narrow down like all these broad areas where we have so much information and it's like, oh my God, there's so much to think about, right? How can I like narrow it down to like 2 things, right? Because off season's about like getting better, right?
Yeah.
And you can't get better without practice. So like if you're practicing 10 things, are you going to get great at any of them? Probably not. But if you're practicing like 1, 2 things that you're weak at every single year, that takes 5 years to get 10. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So all those weaknesses in 5 years, you have 10 strengths now, not 5. So I would say for any high schooler like out there, keep things really simple in the off season, get better at 1 or 2 things that are really important that you're weak at. And then the next 2 things, leave them for the next off season. If that's your goal is like, you want to go pro, you want to get to college and play basketball, like take it 1 or 2 things at a time. Too many things, you're not going to do it. It's just your lifestyle will not be balanced with 10 different things to think about. So.
No, that's awesome, man. I think that's I like that little analogy, 2 things once a year, 5 years, you're working on 10, because sometimes they try to do everything. And if you do everything,
even like workouts, even workouts, like, have you ever noticed like back, I've even gotten rid of it altogether because I see so many better gains with front squat or even Bulgarian squat. Like, I feel like the simpler, the better, right? Like I can keep you in a great posture with those 2 workouts way better than I can with the back squat sometimes.
More risk.
Like I'm like, no. Yeah, I'm like, no, I'm not back squatting. Like, but if you keep it literally more simple and you get bigger gains, that's just kind of how it goes. Yeah.
Exactly. No, man, that's awesome, man. Adam, this is solid. I think a lot of people have learned a lot of stuff. Hopefully they change their mental approach, because I think that's what, you really preach, like, hey, change that mental approach, and that's what's going to change. And I think to kind of recap what you said, less is more. And then we kind of mentioned the best ability is ability. You got to be ready to play. We're talking about overtraining, and we talked about getting in the weight room and then staying in the weight room, not just playing basketball, but getting in the weight room, working on that, not in the weight room, mobility, recovery, rest. So it's a good way to kind of just kind of start the off season for any high school athlete, even college athletes. So, don't really focus on overdoing. We already put enough stress on our body. Let that body relax and then get after it. But yeah, Adam, or Coach Q, so people won't recognize you. They call you Adam.
Yeah.
Who's Adam?
Yeah.
Coach Q. Coach Q. So where do people find you? Where are you training at, or where can they contact you if they want to work with you?
On IG, I'm Q24 Training. That's where most people go to find me. I have a website, Q24training.com. It's not performance, it's training, right? Like, I feel like that's another thing, like we didn't go over, like, I'm trying to wrap my head around this performance thing. It's like, I feel like everybody is a performance coach now, right?
Yeah.
Not like just a lifting coach, just a PT, just a, you know what I mean? So like performance, even I'm trying to wrap my head around it. Like I kind of like just trainer or coach, because like then I have like so many different strengths, right? It's like I can do, I'm master nutritionist, master kettlebell, master weightlifting, like so like all these things, I feel like everybody's trying to train though. It's like you're trying to train the body to do X. So like my website is Q24 Training.com, and like on there you can find, you know, like my app. I just built the Q24 Training app. The super athlete program is on the way. So
nice.
be ready for that. Like that's my next target. Man, it's taking so long for me to, it's so much detail. It's taken me this long to even get to the app part, because I wanted all the systems developed the right way. And easy to use, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's where you can find me, Q24 Training, pretty much every platform, even Gmail, like Q24 Training at Gmail. Like if you have questions or anything like that, your viewers can go there.
Perfect, man. Awesome, Coach Q. And then last little question: what is a 24? Is it for Kobe or what? No.
No, actually, that would be cool if it was just for Kobe, right?
Yeah.
Well, I wore that number first.
Man.
Awesome. I like to always say I wore it first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wore that number. It's also my birthday.
Nice.
But why I said Q24 training is I wanted quality training 24 hours a day. So like I built that calendaring system because I didn't want them to just have training when they're in front of me. I wanted them to have quality all the time. So like you build the calendar, now all of a sudden you're following the calendar literally all day, right? Even in your sleep, it's on there. It's like, all right, on the calendar,
Yeah.
on there, go to bed at 10 o'clock, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of where that came from. Yeah.
That's dope, man. That's dope, Coach.
Yeah.
So yeah, Coach Q, thanks for coming on, man. This was awesome. I think the athletes
Appreciate it.
learned a lot, and then we're gonna include your info in the bottoms and link below. But yeah, guys, if you have any questions, find him like he said on Instagram. We'll put all his links or shoot him a message. But this is awesome to kind of get, hopefully everyone learned a lot on just like that mental approach right now of an athlete. I think that's gonna be our title, just like the mental aspect or the
Absolutely.
approach that you need to go into the off season, not just like, hey, I'm gonna start hitting the weight room. Let's take a full like holistic approach, which I think is very
That's all
rare.
it's about. It's all it's about, holistic approach.
But that's awesome, man. That's awesome. But thanks for coming on, man.
Thank you for having me, man.